So Biden just said everything that he has said for the last week is true, and none of it has been corrected by people who work for him. The truth is, Joe Biden has no idea. Joe Biden has no idea what his publicists say when he goes to sleep. Then midway through his answer, Biden starts walking back his own comments. He does that just minutes after saying he would never walk back his own comments. None of that occurred, Biden said. Look, it feels almost like we're being mean to the guy by quoting him, and no one wants that. No one is making fun of his age or his diminished condition, only trying to defend the country. Then moments later, Biden declared that no reasonable person would think he wants regime change in Russia. Watch this if you can stand it.
Because it's ridiculous. Nobody believes we're going to take down, I was talking about taking down Putin. Nobody believes that.
All right, joke's over. Too much is at stake. As there was ever a time, if there was in U.S. history ever a time to invoke the 25th Amendment, it is now. As Joe Biden himself put it, for God's sakes, this man cannot remain in power.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and my name is Benny Johnson. Welcome to The Benny Show. Tucker Carlson calling for Joe Biden's removal from office vis-a-vis the 25th Amendment. It starts. We've been telling you and preparing you that there is going to be a large movement to remove Biden from office. Not because of partisan reasons, and certainly not because we don't like the cut of his jib, but because we care about our country, the place where we're raising our children and our families, the place that holds our future. And if this country goes and falls into the ash heap of history, gets destroyed, if this country plunders itself, and it can only destroy itself, there is no nation on earth that is strong enough or large enough to defeat us. We must defeat ourselves. Just like other great civilizations, no one could take out Rome except for the Romans. No one could take out the Greeks except for the Greeks. The Mongols could only be undone by their own stupidity, along with every other monarchy and kingdom in Europe. In fact, we did a little bit of research here, and we have an exciting story to tell you. Tucker Carlson has a spectacular reason to be calling for Joe Biden's removal based on, as you heard there in that clip, Joe Biden's imprecise, crippling mishandling of language during wartime. Travel back with us, if you will, to the year 1870, when Prussia and France were at loggerheads. Prussia was the dominant German power, and France, of course, wanting to defend France. They were enemies at their borders, they were enemies in trade, and they were enemies in culture. The two didn't like each other. In order to diffuse the growing sentiment for war, the French ambassador traveled to meet with the Prussian king. They had a nice meeting, but unfortunately the translators at the meetings did not dictate correctly what their meeting was about. They butchered the translations. They butchered the conversation between the two of them. And it was relayed to the French people and to the Prussian people that both the king and the ambassador had been rude to each other. And it was retold in the streets of Paris that the Prussian king had insulted the French ambassador. Throughout the streets of Paris, calls of "To Berlin! To Berlin!" began to rain from the people, and the German states immediately pledged their support to Prussia. This resulted in the Franco-Prussian War, a butchering of language, a miscalculation in how people were speaking to each other as heads of state and as representatives of powerful states led to the slaughter of hundreds of thousands, one of the largest wars in mainland Europe ever, and a war that had extreme consequences and horrifying realities for regular citizens. So, as Tucker is calling for the removal of Joe Biden from office, he has firm, historic, foundational understanding and realities to pull from. Wars have been started by imprecise language from stupid leaders making dumb decisions. This is the reality of our world, and this is the reality of our country right now. Joe Biden has indeed plunged this country into the closest we have ever been to a full-on confrontation with Russia through imprecise, logger-headed, nincompoop-style language that even Joe Biden can't get correct after days of training and note card facilitation. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a crisis, and having the world in chaos and a man who doesn't have the capacity to speak or think at the helm, you are tempting fate, and we are tempting fate as a nation. It's very, very scary, and we don't want to try and scare anyone, but we certainly do want to state that we are not messing around here, now, on the global arena. There is indeed a horrible crisis at hand, and it is being made worse by Joe Biden. Joe Biden, this week in Poland, said that Vladimir Putin needs to have regime change in Russia. He said that troops will be deployed to Ukraine and that America would be using chemical weapons. The White House has had to walk back all of those things, but he said them. Peter Doocy at the White House calling Joe Biden on this terrifying prospect to his face. Joe Biden's response will put a chill in your veins. Listen.
Oh, you're going to ask a really nice question.
Well, it's an important question, I think. Are you worried that other leaders in the world are going to start to doubt that America is back if some of these big things that you say on the world stage keep getting walked back?
What's getting walked back?
It made it sound like, just in the last couple days, it sounded like you told U.S. troops they were going to Ukraine. It sounded like you said it was possible the U.S. would use a chemical weapon, and it sounded like you were calling for regime change in Russia, and we know...
None of the three occurred.
None of the three occurred?
None of the three.
Mr. President?
You interpret the language that way. I was talking to the troops. We were talking about helping train the troops that are the Ukrainian troops that are in Poland. That's what the context. I sat there with those guys for a couple hours. That's what we talked about.
So when you said you're going to see when you're there, you were not intending to...
I was referring to meeting with and talking with the Ukrainian troops that were in Poland.
What kind of a world do we live in where leftists can just create reality? They can say things and then say, I didn't say that. They can choose their genders. They can decide that they were beat up by a MAGA squad on the streets of Chicago. They don't live in the real world. These people aren't grounded in reality. It's why the foremost philosophers throughout the ages have always asked the question, what is truth? Because if you have no truth, then you are going to spiral into chaos. And that's what Joe Biden is doing. Joe Biden said this, and I quote, "For God's sake, this man, Vladimir Putin, cannot remain in power." He said that. It's on tape, and it's in the White House record. The White House had to walk back this comment, saying that the president meant Putin could not continue to wield power. Well, those are two slightly different things. Still, not something that you want to be saying about the man who controls the vast majority of nuclear weapons on the planet. Also, how does a dog behave when you back it into a corner? How does any animal behave when it's scared or pushed to the brink? If Vladimir Putin believes that the policy of America is to remove him from office, what do you think he's going to do? Scary times brought about by bungling nincompoop leaders like Joe Biden. Western leaders have been horrified by all this. They said that they fear any hint of regime change will make it harder for Putin to dial back his deadly war in Ukraine. Biden asked about the comments after he unveiled his 2023 budget at the White House, didn't help himself. He said, number one, I'm not walking anything back. Dude, you said it on camera that you're looking for regime change. We know throughout the course of European history that wars have started that have slaughtered hundreds of thousands of people through lack of punctuation. You gotta be careful when you're talking during times like this. The most dangerous time in American history, in my memory. Certainly the most chaotic time in the world in my 35 years on this planet. Joe Biden, however, said he will not be walking back his comments for regime change, even though the White House already walked them back. What the hell is going on? Listen.
Do you believe what you said, that Putin can't remain in power? Or do you now regret saying that because your government has been trying to walk that back? Did your words complicate matters?
Well, you asked 3 different questions. I'll answer them all. Number one, I'm not walking anything back. The fact of the matter is I was expressing the moral outrage I felt toward the way Putin is dealing in the actions of this man. Just brutality of it. Half the children in Ukraine. I just come from being with those families. But I want to make it clear, I wasn't then, nor am I now, articulating a policy change. I was expressing the moral outrage that I feel, and I make no apologies for it.
Personal feelings?
My personal feelings. Secondly, you asked me about, what was the second part?
Could not even remember the questions. Put yourself in the position of the Russian people. Ask yourself. And I know there's a lot of people who hate America in this country. It's very sad you people are such losers. But ask yourself this. Even the people who hate America, do you want a foreign power coming in and choosing our president for us? Ask. Would you like Vladimir Putin choosing who can be the president of the United States? How about Xi Jinping of China? How about Bolsonaro of Brazil? Do you want a foreign agent coming in and deciding who will be the president of the United States? How does that make you feel as an American? What if leaders around the world were calling for that and saying that the people that we decided as a culture are going to be our leaders, rightly or wrongly, no matter what the hell they think about it, that they cannot be our leaders? Well, it would probably piss you off. Doesn't matter what kind of an American you are. It doesn't even matter if you don't like this place a lot. You would still be offended by that. Much less being a patriot in the street, flag waving, who truly does believe that this place is the last best hope on earth. You're going to say, hell no. So if you reverse Biden's comments, you realize how utterly insulting they are for Biden to say that Russia doesn't have a right to choose its own leader. It's catastrophic. It's dangerous, and it's playing right into Putin's hand because Putin's sitting there saying, I need the context for going to war. And the context now for going to war in Russia is that America wants regime change. America wants to come in and push Russia around and tell Russia who can be the leader of Russia. Guys, not even during the Cold War did Ronald Reagan or Kennedy say that he's going to collapse the Soviet Union and that they're going to choose a new leader for Russia. I mean, those kind of words would spark a nuclear conflict during those times. You'll recall in 1962, the Russians were putting nuclear-tipped missiles essentially in Miami. You can row a boat from Havana to Miami, and they were putting nuclear-tipped missiles pointed directly at America. And if you were to believe the historic record, Castro wanted to fire them at New York City and at Miami and at Washington, D.C. Castro wanted to just push the button. That's how close we were. Imagine if Kennedy had called for total regime change in Moscow at the time. This is how dangerous of a world we're living in. And Joe Biden is doing Putin's bidding for him because now the Russian people are going to think, well, hell, we don't want America picking our leader. No country wants that. The Kremlin is seizing on these comments, saying that this statement is alarming. This according to Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov. Biden faced a barrage of questions from reporters attempting to clarify his position and whether he had blundered. Peter Doocy read Biden's own statements to him, and Joe Biden said none of the three occurred. You heard it in the clip there. None of the three blunders occurred. The things you saw aren't real. I don't know if there are any Marvel fans in the audience, but Thanos gets a glove, right, with the Reality Stone in the Infinity Wars. And the Reality Stone means reality can be anything I want. Boom. There goes. Reality. I just didn't say them. It just didn't happen. This guy. Joe Biden's mind is about as pretend as the mind of the Avengers. Let's have a listen. Biden's blunders did indeed happen. There is no reality stone. It's all fantasy. Here's the real world. Go.
You're going to see when you're there, and some of you have been there, you're going to see women, young people standing in the middle in front of a damn tank, just saying, I'm not leaving. I'm holding my ground. They're incredible. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
And to clarify on chemical weapons, if chemical weapons were used in Ukraine, would that trigger a military response from NATO?
It would trigger a response in kind. Whether or not you're asking whether NATO would cross, we'd make that decision at the time.
So, in those clips, you heard Biden promising to use chemical weapons against Russia. You heard Joe Biden promising regime change in Russia. And you heard Joe Biden telling the 82nd Airborne Division that they will be walking through the streets of Ukraine soon. What does Joe Biden know that we don't know? Why would Joe Biden say those things? It's dangerous. And more dangerous than that is a president who can't even recall that he said those things. This is why Tucker Carlson's calling for the 25th Amendment. This is why. Because you can see on your screen right now a cheat sheet. The cheat sheet. Tough Putin Q&A talking points. Joe Biden. The White House tried to clean up the 9 words that were not part of the scripted speech. Of course, Joe Biden goes off prompter, which is like watching like a old grandmother with pink hair driving across the center median of the road. You know that something horrible is about to happen when Joe Biden goes off prompter, and it did indeed happen. Joe Biden had to get a cheat sheet saying that he doesn't want regime change, and then he strayed from his own cheat sheet. This is an AP photograph of Joe Biden's translucent syphilitic hand holding up a talking point memo of how to answer this question, and he couldn't even get that right when it's on a gigantic flashcard in front of him. 25th Amendment, ladies and gentlemen. This happens when the cabinet votes that the president is incapacitated and cannot do the job of the presidency anymore. That the country is under real threat because the president just does not have the ability to do this job. The 25th Amendment, put in there by our founders because they know that men are flawed and people have expiration dates on them. God gives them to all of us. And Joe Biden has hit his woof. Man. Biden's comments were seized on by the Kremlin and their allies, and now they are using it as a pretext for war. They're saying the Americans always wanted regime change. This is why Russia must defend itself. You're playing into their hands, you jackass. God. World leaders also rebuked Biden for his sloppy speeches all throughout Poland, on the border of Ukraine. I mean, you're talking about bordering a war zone there. Joe Biden's call for regime change in Russia could embolden Russian President Vladimir Putin to escalate war tensions. This according to Breitbart.com. On Monday, Western allies of France and Germany tamped down President Biden's assertion that regime change is needed in Russia, stating that the White House immediately retracted. Nevertheless, the leaders felt the need to respond to Biden's assessment, saying it could make it harder to resolve the conflict. So now you have our closest allies since a generation ago, since the greatest generation, our closest allies, France and Germany, England, all of them doing cleanup aisle 7. The night nurse has to come in because Joe Biden craps the bed once again and spirals us ever further towards nuclear holocaust. Emmanuel Macron feared Biden's remarks could embolden Putin and escalate the Ukrainian war. Macron urged caution from the U.S. I wouldn't use those terms because I continue to speak with Putin, because what do we want collectively? We want to stop the war. Of course we do. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that he needed to comment on Biden's remark over fears that Biden's loose talk could embolden Putin in Ukraine. Here's what the German chancellor said. We both agree completely that regime change is not an object of aim or policy to pursue together. Biden's statement that Putin can't remain in power was just one mistake that he made last week. Here's the hilarity of the entire thing is that the Franco-Prussian War was started between Germany and France having really bad communication with each other, and then they slaughter hundreds of thousands of each other's civilians, right? They go to war because of bad communication. Wars have been started because of idiots speaking out of turn, having bad punctuation, and not saying what they mean to say. Having bad translation and misunderstanding from the enemy. Wars have been started and people have died. France and Germany know it very well. Travel back to 1870. Wasn't terribly long ago. 130 years ago. Woof. Woof. Maybe this is why people are saying that Joe Biden ain't up for the job. Because Joe Biden's saying he wants chemical war with Russia. Listen, this is against the Geneva Convention. What Joe Biden's saying is quite literally illegal. You're not allowed to engage in chemical warfare, not by any standard. So if Russia uses chemical weapons, Joe Biden says we're going to respond in kind. That means we're going to respond with chemical weapons. If somebody throws scalding hot water in your face, and you respond in kind, that means that you throw scalding hot water in their face. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. An NBC News poll revealed 71% of Americans have low confidence in Biden's ability to deal with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. 71% of Americans? This was supposed to be Biden's Reagan-esque moment. This was supposed to be Biden's, look at my clarity, my true international pressure. I'll apply true international pressure for better health care. No. Americans are saying no. No. You old, beleaguered man from the Life Alert and Visiting Angels commercial. You are getting us into war with Russia. An AP poll found that 26% of Americans only believe that Biden can manage the escalation with Russia and Putin. These are abysmal numbers. They add to the growing sentiment in the Republican caucuses, as we heard from Jim Jordan yesterday, that Joe Biden needs to be impeached. And I am speaking with a number of members of Congress on background and off the record, people that are friends of the show, saying, listen, it's going to be a bad road for the Bidens ahead. We are not going to make this a pleasant couple of years on the Biden crime family. You didn't have to run for office. You could have just sailed into the sunset. Hunter Biden didn't need to be a public figure, but because you, through your own lust for power and narcissism, forced yourself on this country in a deeply dangerous election and during a flawed process in 2020, you, sir, are going to get what's coming to you, which is going to be the full and total investigation of your family, its business dealings, and the corruption that you have, the corrupt life that you have led through 40 to 50 odd years of public service, right? We need to redefine that word because Joe Biden has served no one but himself in his entire lifetime in office. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the dogs are coming home to bark. The chickens are coming home to roost. The tax inquiry into Hunter Biden is heating up. U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware are looking into the funds that Biden obtained through Burisma and what he did with those funds. This according to the Post-Millennial. As House GOP makes plans to subpoena President Biden's son Hunter, the federal tax inquiry into the younger Biden is heating up. Prosecutors in the case are aiming to uncover the source of his income from foreign sources in foreign countries and digging into his relationship with the Ukrainian energy giant Burisma. U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware are looking into the funds that Biden obtained from Burisma and what he did with those funds. There have been ongoing investigations into Biden's drug and alcohol use and how he spent the money in 2018. Much of Biden's illicit activity is detailed in his own memoir, Beautiful Things, as well as Miranda Devine's Laptop from Hell, which revealed that what was found on the laptop abandoned by Biden in Delaware was indeed criminal. The Wall Street Journal reports that these records are being sought by prosecutors, likely in advance of a trial. Prosecutors are primarily concerned with the violations of tax law and whether Biden's dealings with foreign governments and foreign investments have resulted in not adhering to U.S. tax laws. Prosecutors are looking into the potential violations of the Foreign Agents Registries Act, which required those who are lobbying in the U.S. on behalf of foreign companies to register as agents in that capacity. Biden reportedly hired a third-party company to do the lobbying, so it's unclear whether it would have to register as an agent. Biden was on the board of Burisma from 2014 to 2019, earning about $50,000 a month from sitting on that board. The funds went from Burisma to Rosemont Seneca Strategies, LLC, before being paid out to Biden. The concerns that the funds were moved in a way that to obscure Biden's tax liability, the Journal reports. So this is the real crisis for the Biden family. Who is the big guy? Is Joe Biden benefiting off of corrupt business dealings abroad? Is Joe Biden the mark, the person who is going to be getting the receipts, the payments, not paying taxes through corrupt business dealings because it would look bad for old Joe on his tax forms, to be getting direct payments from Chinese companies and Ukrainian companies, especially when Joe Biden is overseeing those relationships with the United States? That's just good old-fashioned corruption. And that's what they are going to find out in these investigations. You can see on the floor of the Senate happening at this very moment, Chuck Grassley is presenting evidence that indeed Hunter Biden was in direct business communications with the Communist Chinese government, and that Chinese government payment was affecting policy. That's pay for play. That's illegal. That's going to wind people up in jail. And you have to ask the question, why are we all talking about this right now? And it's not because Republicans are going to roar back into power in 2022. It's happening right now because the media is trying to get ahead of the story. The corporate press, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, they are validated the Hunter Biden laptop. They're attempting to get ahead of this story. This story is going to be a severely damaging bombshell for the corporate American elite, and they are going to hang out the Bidens to dry. Biden has spent his time in a very useless manner as president. He has outlived his usefulness, and now the vultures are going to start and circle above him and his family. They knew that he was corrupt when he ran for office. They knew that he was corrupt as they were bending the election in his favor, openly talking about the rigging of the election. CIA operative John Cipher straight up on Twitter this weekend, saying that he's proud that he swung the election for Biden by signing a letter calling Hunter Biden's laptop, the same laptop that's going to take down the entire Biden crime family, Russian disinformation. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are dealing with evil and corrupt people. They hate you. They have no regard for the truth. Joe Biden will straight up say, when presented with video of him saying something, I didn't say that. What kind of a world do you live in? This is not the world that you want to remain in America. You do not want people that say things like Joe Biden is saying. It makes for a dangerous world. It makes for a scary place. It makes for a place where you are unsure of the future and where the things that are precious to you are taken from you. Your liberty, your security, and the security of your family. And that's why we're very, very proud to be covering Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis, who has been securing and protecting Florida's families from predators, from groomers, and from those who wish to usurp the rights of a parent to raise their own children in their own traditions and with their own morals. You see, the purpose of a public education is to educate a child in order to make them a functional part of a greater American community, to teach them about math and to teach them about writing and to teach them about how to get along with their fellow children, no matter who they are or where they come from. Yes, those are important qualities to public education. And for the last 100 years, people have generally agreed that producing young, stable minds is exactly the purpose of a public education. That's why we have a Department of Education, in order to make sure that America is cranking out kids that adhere to societal standards and can function. Somewhere along the line, this was horrifically derailed. And school became about indoctrination. And school became about making sure that those kids behind the parents' backs were stamped with the kind of culture that the teachers wished to create. And the teachers became not little old grannies who were kind to the kids and wanted to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic, but instead were pink-haired sociopaths who were attempting to corrupt the children at their most corruptible age. I have a 1-year-old, gotta tell you, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those kids, they are a product of their environments. They will absorb, shockingly so, the things around them, what you tell them, the things you say, the things you do. They'll watch you and they'll say, I want to do that. If you have a toothbrush and you're brushing your teeth, they'll grab a toothbrush and brush their teeth. They absorb. And this is why we are so proud of Governor DeSantis from de-venomizing the groomers inside of our public education system who wishes to implant sexuality and radical sexual theory on children at their most innocent and absorbing age. Let's read the article from Fox News. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed into law Monday the Parental Rights in Education bill, giving classroom instruction on sexual orientation or gender identity, making those practices illegal, banning them in kindergarten through 3rd grade. It should have been kindergarten through 12th grade, but the rhinos inside of the Florida legislature, specifically Chris Sproles, did not allow it. Not good. In Florida, we are not only known, in Florida, we not only know that parents have a right to be involved, we insist that parents have a right to be involved, DeSantis said at a press conference for the Classical Preparatory School in Spring Hill, Florida. Parental Rights in Education bill, which was passed by a Republican-controlled state legislature this month and has falsely been dubbed the Don't Say Gay bill by Democrats who misleadingly claim that it bans discussion pertaining to being gay in Florida schools. The bill was mocked at the Oscars Sunday night, with co-hosts Wanda Sykes and Amy Schumer repeating the word gay to the crowd as they applauded. DeSantis hit back at his critics in Hollywood, saying if people who held up the degenerates like Harvey Weinstein as examples, as heroes, and all that, if those are the types of people who are opposing us on parental rights, I wear this as a badge of honor. Ron DeSantis, classic, dropping the bomb. Listen.
And so we will continue to recognize that in the state of Florida, parents have a fundamental role in the education, healthcare, and well-being of their children. We will not move from that. I don't care what corporate media outlets say. I don't care what Hollywood says. I don't care what big corporations say. Here I stand. I'm not backing down.
Ron DeSantis is, of course, correct there. These degenerates in Hollywood, these people try and claim to be your moral betters. These are some of the most depraved, narcissistic, sad, soulless, cold jackasses on planet Earth. These people prop up some of the biggest abusers and monsters and cretins on the planet, some of the most perverse, pedophilic human beings ever to be known. How many of those people appeared on Jeffrey Epstein's flight logs? That's the question you need to ask yourself. These people are indeed monsters. Everybody knows the story of Harvey Weinstein, but there are so many others. It's awful. All you need to do is listen to some of the tell-all stories and books of various small Hollywood children to know that these people are absolute degenerates. And this is exactly why you need bills like this one. Because they want to be able to take your kids and behind your back, sexualize them and turn them against you. That's what this is all about. It's about uprooting children and turning them against the parents. For example, Ron DeSantis says they support sexualizing kids in kindergarten. They support injecting woke gender ideology into second grade classrooms. And what they're doing with these slogans and these narratives is that they are trying to camouflage their true intentions. Joe Biden, of course, called this a hateful bill in a tweet last month. Yeah, right. But absent from much of the discussion around the bill is the actual contents of the legislation. The bill does prohibit classroom instruction on sexual orientation and gender ideology with children in 3rd grade or younger, or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students. It's insane that we even have to go here. The bill does not ban the word gay in school settings. It does not ban casual discussions of topics relating to sexual orientation or gender ideology in the classroom. DeSantis spokeswoman Christina Pasqua said in a statement earlier Monday that the governor is unfazed by the threats or boycotts over the bill. Many of the tourists in Florida have visited us from states with mandates and restrictions to enjoy the freedoms and sense of normalcy in Florida that has become renowned under Governor DeSantis' leadership, she wrote. Business is thriving here as well because the governor kept our state open, our tax burden remains the lowest in the country, and our children are indeed safe. These are things that everyone can appreciate regardless of their gender or sexual orientation, she added. We are not concerned about boycotts or other economic harm as Florida as a result of any other legislation. But even if we were, no amount of money would convince Governor DeSantis to change his position. He will always stand for parental rights and protecting children. Your children belong to you, or they belong to the state. Those are the only two options. Your children are either yours or they are a product and an organ of the state. And it is for then the state and generally childless, godless libs to mold them against their own creation and to mold them against you. The purpose of all of this is to confuse. The purpose of all of this is to tear down the histories of the world, as Karl Marx called it, the end of history, to uproot the structures that are more powerful than the state. And what structures are more powerful than the state? Your religion, your family, your personal connections. Those things are more powerful than the state, and they must be destroyed. That's how these people think. It's an evil ideology, and we must protect ourselves against it. Ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you, this has been such a fun and delightful show to do. The reason why we do this show every single day is in order to give you truth. We want truth to be spoken because if you do not fight, if you are not in the battles, you will not win the war. The left will push where there is mush. They will try and usurp and control where we do not push back. And so that's why we do the Benny Show every single morning. We have our priorities straight on this show. The priorities are this: God, family, country. And we're not backing down. We're going to go in, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to fight. We're going to speak the truth. And we're going to show you precisely what is happening in your world and the dangers that it presents. When Joe Biden cannot speak precisely, well, wars have been started when leaders cannot speak precisely. When Hunter Biden is using his office, meaning the office of Joe Biden, to enrich their family and to do corrupt business dealings throughout the world, well, that imperils the president. That imperils their ability to make decisions that will affect your lives. And when Ron DeSantis signs a bill that says with extreme clarity that children are yours and not the government's, you deserve to know about it. And you deserve to applaud him. We applaud him because we are born free men and women. And we intend to stay that way. Free people raising our children in freedom and with our own values, our own traditional values. And that is what is going to save America, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get about saving America. My name is Benny Johnson, and this is The Benny Show.